that our offerings are properly guided for responsiveness to both digital economy and the future of work. So we remain focused towards addressing the challenge that I earlier on alluded to, those triple challenges that continue to face the young people of South Africa, including those who might have been displaced out of their jobs during the tough times of COVID-19. So the challenge of digital skills gaps with strategic alliance partners across all sectors, despite limited financial resources before us, it's what we are trying to address, whilst bringing closer more partners with additional resources for better leveraging in the interest of our young people. At the center, ladies and gentlemen, of why this capacity building and engagement session is the need to ensure that all our stakeholders have the appropriate capacity to respond to our needs and expectations, such that delivery of our set targets on an annual basis is not compromised and the quality element is what it is supposed to be. There are other regulatory bodies, ladies and gentlemen, just to share, such as Auditor General of South Africa, who annually audit how funds allocated to us as an entity of government or an organ of state are spent, both in terms of financial accountability and performance reporting. So when documents submitted are not up to the required standard, it doesn't only compromise the annual targets on overall performance of the SITA, but also compromises aspects of good corporate governance and compliance and our learners directly. We must never forget that what is bringing us together at the center of our relationship is those poor learners who come to us desperate for knowledge, desperate for skills. So whatever we do in our relationship management must safeguard and preserve the interests of these learners, because they are the ones who have brought and are bringing us together. So whatever we do must at all material times ensure that we protect and defend them. So we are deliberate, ladies and gentlemen, in ensuring that all our stakeholders, irrespective of their geographical location, have the appropriate understanding of what is expected in order to be evaluated for growth opportunities in the system, in the SITA. We are one SITA that strongly believes and has strong conviction in the growth of SMMEs, and we will continue to do our part in supporting SMMEs because of the impact that we believe they have the power to make in their respective communities. It must be put on record, ladies and gentlemen, that we've also identified gaps in submission of compliance documents across most layers. Hence, we are in your warm company with a team of experts across various core departments of the SITA who are going to take you through a whole range of presentations, like I alluded to earlier on, necessary for enhancement of your capacity as we move forward. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll from time to time engage so that there's improved understanding of our processes for greater shared value and stakeholder legitimacy. I agree we can't always be coming to you to tell you how things should be done. At times, as we come, we want to understand as to what on the ground is happening, what kind of challenges are you experiencing, so that internally we can improve our business processes to better respond to how you would want to continue to add value in the skills development agenda of this country. So we are here not only to present, but also listen to your views as our critical stakeholders who are there to enable us to drive this vision before us of cutting-edge future skills. And we wanted first-hand experience. That's why we wanted to sit right in front of you and not even do it in a manner that is responding to the digital era, but face to face, hear direct from the horse's mouth as to where do you think we need to improve as an entity so that we serve you better. Most of you know very well that we experienced challenges over time with regards to our learner management system, and fundamentally one must indicate that at this point in time we have managed to make great progress with regards to development of key components of the system, so much that full-scale rollout will be happening very soon. And one must indicate that this is after a successful collaborative partnership from the context and basis of the triple helix model that MICT-SITA adopted on the one side, and the white paper on post-school education and training, which culminated not only to the integrated digital skills strategy, but the broader rural development strategy that we need to leverage on strategic collaborations in order to accelerate and ensure that we massify digital skills. The mandate from the highest office that we report to, which is that of the minister, it's a very clear one. That is ensuring that we massify digital skills, we ensure digital inclusivity, we leave no one behind when it comes to that particular reality. The reality of our country is that we still have huge digital divide, and the responsibility and obligation between us as MICT-SITA on the one hand and you as stakeholders on the other hand is to ensure that we work hand in hand in bridging this digital divide. So from these two strategies that I alluded to, the emphasis is ensuring that we continue to forge what I call mutually beneficial strategic alliances or collaborations with partners such that we continue to implant as many digital skills centers as possible across all regions of our country. Even the most rural of provinces of our country should one way or the other be supported, not only in terms of digital skills, a reason why we have even strategic partners in terms of large and medium companies, so that they also contribute in putting up or setting up some of these digital skills centers in the interest of empowering or building the capacity of our young people. So from the triple helix model, we forge partnerships with not only the academia, but also the industry, so that they give host employing to our young people to ensure that in implementing the National Skills Development Plan, but by ensuring that there's exposure to workplace, employers can easily come on board to provide that learning experience, because to most SMMEs, it's one of the biggest challenges to find host employers. So part of why we adopted the triple helix model and ensure that it culminates to an integrated digital strategy digital skills strategy to ensure that we bring all potential employers, prospective employers on board to give our young people that flair and touch of experience, so that we make it easy for them to transition not only into gainful employment, but also into entrepreneurial opportunities. So we have all those parties in our hands. We were recently, I think about a week ago on Friday, we had TUT, which is currently rolling out our learner management system. Deliberately, the board resolved that we cannot outsource it. We have thought leaders within our academic institution. We've got to move towards a point where we develop these solutions. These solutions, smart solutions, must be developed locally. As we preach research, and innovation, we need to work towards ensuring that we practice what we preach by empowering local young people and ensuring that they participate in the whole value chain of developing these solutions. If it means at some point they've got to be prototyped and be commercialized, that's what we want. That's what will take us to the next level. It can be that even in this year and age, South Africa cannot produce or manufacture small, smart solutions. We've got to start small and start somewhere, and the academic space is the most appropriate space where, in collaboration with the industry, we must work towards developing as many solutions as possible. We are fascinated as MICT-SITA that with the little funds that we provided and supported TUT, we have seen the results, amazing results of the kind of solutions under the stewardship of Prof. Pius, who is our 4IR research chair. They've developed quite amazing solutions for young people that are aligned to 4IR. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I move further, I'll have to indicate that we will, under the circumstances we're finding ourselves in as an emerging economy, under reconstruction, where resources keep shrinking, have to share the little or limited resources that are there and religiously adopt that spirit of sharing. One thing that we stand for as MICT-SITA that makes us unique, it's ensuring that we cover as many people as possible because we believe, we have strong conviction that if we don't share the limited resources that are before us, it works against us and it works against many communities. So don't be surprised when we give you numbers that seem to be small. We give you numbers that seem to be small because we have strong conviction that we have to share the cake. That era where one stakeholder will get 900 learners, it's unfortunately gone, because we believe that as a people, we shall share, in line with the Freedom Charter, the wealth of our country. Bit by bit, ensure that as many communities as possible, as many regions as possible, as many young people in this country as possible, irrespective of their geographical location, are covered in our agenda to address digital skills. So we'll ensure that we leave no one behind by virtue of their geographical isolation or location. So our reality remains to say that all our people deserve better. There remains no better return on investment to MICT-SITA collective than our people, young and old, securing sustainable jobs, contributing into the mainstream and their local economies, and becoming critical thinkers, bringing into our space smart solutions that end up into the market. That is what makes us proud as a skills development machinery of government. Eventually export those solutions that have been made locally and create even bigger opportunities. So I believe, ladies and gentlemen, with great conviction that our youth are capable of building these groundbreaking innovations if we continuously invest in research, in engaging them such that they engage in critical thinking, in problem solving, and it is in your hands. As we fund, ensure we do the necessary quality assurance, it is in your hands to ensure that you give them the totality of what is appropriate just beyond basic skills. Ensure that you also build their capacity in terms of problem solving and critical thinking such that they develop the necessary solutions that will take us to the next level. And that way, ladies and gentlemen, will be in the right direction in terms of bridging the digital divide, but also ensuring that digital inclusivity that I referred to, so that we defeat the scourge of this abject poverty our masses are experiencing. We need and plead with companies to take up, absorb, and ensure that they take up our graduates. But on the other hand, our stakeholders responsible for facilitating learning to ensure quality learning. Quality learning is that which you'll be proud of by getting into the learner's shoe to say, if I was this learner, would I be happy with the kind of learning that I'm facilitating? If you are not happy about what you are providing to or facilitating to them, you need to ask yourself a lot of questions. It means it's not fit for purpose. It's not quality enough to make them competitive in the world of work or the entrepreneurial space. So we always need to try and get into their shoes to say, is this enough? Is this relevant? Is this appropriate to the new era, the future of work that we are making reference to? So, ladies and gentlemen, I would have failed in my duty if I don't make mention of our reality, that there are stakeholders who continue to let us down, and unfortunately, under such circumstances of non-performance as per the contract terms and conditions, we will have no option but to terminate such contracts. The reality of termination is one. When you don't deliver as per the contract terms and conditions, there's what we call internal audit. Beyond internal audit, there are committees of the board. We call them governance structures of the entity. They hold us all accountable for each and every little cent that we spend in the interest of that learner. But when we get to a point where we remind you to ensure that if we paid you your stipend, please ensure that you pay learners what is due to them. And you fail to do that basic or honor that basic obligation, you are leaving us with no option but to terminate the contract. And once you terminate the contract, the disadvantage with terminating the contract is the effort, the time, and the money that you are going to spend, even on lawyers, because we've got to try and ensure that we recover the money that would have been extended to you, but you fail to extend it to where it's supposed to be. So that's the challenge that we face, and we urge all our stakeholders to ensure that they do us good as we try and build the skills development machinery of government as a collective, jointly with you on the other side. Let's do it without compromising each other, because the money that should be channeled to one of the stakeholders to ensure that they deliver on our learning programs that are 4R aligned, it ends up in the hands of lawyers having to fight to recover the money, which is wasteful. We don't want that. We want each party to take their obligations serious and ensure that they deliver on their obligations. So any termination that we engage in has got ripple effect on poor learners, just beyond financial implications on scarce financial resources we should be using for what is worth it. So please, when we fund your application to deliver, don't fail us and our learners, because they come there desperate, having keen interest to improve the living conditions, not only of their families, but their own living conditions. Let's ensure that we do our part in delivering as optimally as possible. That way, we'll be building a better South Africa for the future. So let's implement religiously, ladies and gentlemen, per the terms, and if funds allow, we will continue. I must acknowledge funds are always limited, very much limited. We get plus minus 2,500 applications per single DG window, and 2,500 applications per single DG window means that even if you are to allocate 2020, you'll allocate less than 500 stakeholders. And I'm sure one of my colleagues is going to demonstrate to you. You'll see the reality of the challenge that we are facing, of limited targets, limited financial resources. That's why we run even after other funding agencies of government, like your National Skills Fund, your unemployment insurance fund, so that they can give us additional funds, and we, on the other hand, extend a hand to you so that you maximize and do more on the ground. Ladies and gentlemen, like I alluded to earlier on, I've got a team of experts, from the research side. I think it's Mr. Thabang Motsweni is attached to sector skills planning, where everything starts in terms of getting to understand what the industry requires. And there's also LPD, Mr. Ernest Nemgabini, the Senior Manager responsible for learning programs, where we roll out all of these programs. And there's ETQA, where the quality assurance is ensured and qualifications get realigned. And in the process, there will be new qualifications that gets developed in line and in keeping with the spirit of what you as the industry requires, from top-level paying companies, your medium, all the way up to SMEs. Because to us, all stakeholders matter. So listening to your needs and expectations is always important for us. And we also have the 4IR Senior Manager, Ms. Gugusema, will take us through their own processes. And they've managed to develop a total of 39 qualifications in response to what you as the industry were expecting as responsive to the future of work, from your Internet of Things, your artificial intelligence, your 3D printing, all of those qualifications that you can think of, your cyber security, your data science, etc., etc. We've developed those qualifications collaboratively with the Quality Council so that we give you what is worth it. We give you that which is responsive in terms of curriculum, and that which will produce future-ready graduates, and those kind of graduates who will become entrepreneurs in their own right. So colleagues will, per the time allocated, take you through various presentations for better understanding and effective and efficient program rollout and opening of more opportunities for you and obviously our graduates. Let me just pause there and allow the program to continue in terms of the presentations that would be definitely value-adding to all of you. Thanks very much. Over to you, class.
Thank you to Mr. Madibane, our Chief Executive Officer. Colleagues, I think one key takeout that I took from the CEO's overview is greater shared value and stakeholder legitimacy. This means obviously that it is everyone's responsibility to ensure that we have an integrated approach towards providing responsive skills development interventions within our regions as well as our country broadly. So in not too many words, I think the CEO was obviously holding us accountable such that we are able to take the baton forward and ensure that we deliver on skills development interventions that look at curbing our social, economic, as well as our environmental conditions. That then brings us through to our second presentation, or our first presentation rather, for the day. As the CEO has alluded to, we will be having a presentation from the Sector Skills Planning Division, who will just provide us an overview. They'll be covering the OFO codes for 2021. They'll also take us through the WSP as well as the annual training plan submissions, annual training reports rather submissions, as well as take us through a presentation on mandatory grants and some of the SSP findings. I will hand over then to Mr. Thabang Motsweni to take us through this presentation. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. My name is Thabang Motsweni. I'm the acting manager SSP. I'm also the researcher for the SITA. And probably you're all wondering why they're starting with a young man like myself. This is mainly because what the CEO has already reflected in terms of the process of the SITA starting with the SSP. So who's the SSP, or what is the SSP? So the SSP, in many of the other 20 SITAs, they often refer it as the research unit. The research unit, which deals with the development of the sector skills planning and also the strategic plan. So we carry the same mandate as with the other SITAs, SSP or research units. As can be seen on my screen, I made just a brief summary in terms of what we do. Mainly our core mandate in terms of the Skills Development Act is to develop the sector skills plan. So this is the 65-page research document that we develop or update annually. I think it would be very ignorant of us as a SITA to just implement programs or priorities without understanding what's happening in our sector. Therefore, it's important that the process of the SITA starts with the environmental scanning, which is, of course, to develop the sector skills plan. So that's what I'll be in detail presenting today. Of course, as a unit, we're responsible for a number of things. One is to provide capacity building in terms of WSPs and ATR submissions, and also, of course, manage the workplace skills plans and ATR submissions. We might have interacted at some point, and yes, it's one of our core functions as a unit to be able to help you guys. And also, from our side, the WSPs are very crucial for us to providing the foundation to our research and for us to develop the research questions. But of course, I'll be getting to detail why you guys need to submit those WSPs and ETRs. And the mandatory grants process. So the way I've numbered, or I've pointed out each of the elements here, so that you understand that each process shouldn't be viewed as a separate process, but it feeds to the other, leading up to the development of the strategic plan. We also manage the mandatory grants, and of course, we are, as SITAs, coordinators of the OFO codes. I'll also explain what we mean by OFO codes. So OFO codes, of course, in full, is the organizing framework for occupations, but I'll go into detail in terms of what that entails. And then, of course, I've already explained we conduct research. There are other ministry research reports that we draft, and also we engage with each and every one of you. Our research as a SITA needs to be evidence informed so that we know what's really happening within the sector. And of course, the final stage is to develop the strategic plan. I did indicate that as a SITA, we are a reflective organization, and of course, for us to be better every year in our implementation, we need to have an SSP which speaks to what the industry needs. So in brief, as you can see, my presentation will be short, but I promise you nothing will be missed, and I guarantee that you'll be informed after this presentation. So it will cover the OFO codes, the WSP ATR submissions, mandatory grants, and the 2023-2024 SSP findings. These are the findings that we're going to be implementing in the next financial year. So I did indicate that the full concept OFO code, what does it mean? So what this means is that this is a framework between DHET and SITAs. We use it for reporting, so it's to promote consistency in reporting. Imagine if one organization has a cybersecurity specialist and the other organization has an information security specialist. From a face value, you might think that these are actually the same, whereas they are not the same. So what this framework helps us to do is that it provides a description on how each occupation and specialization differs from the other. Whereas an information security specialist will focus on more on internal things like you're protecting your data, your information or your data, and obviously providing access. Whereas your cybersecurity specialist will look at protecting the organization from external threats such as your hackers and so on. So why do we consider this as important, as an important framework? For us to be able to see where the gaps are in the industry, we need to understand, of course, there needs to be a system in place. So this helps us to track where those gaps are, and of course, is to promote consistency in reporting. And of course, this framework is updated every 2 years. Each SITA has a coordinator. In this case, it's myself, the researcher, and also the acting manager, SSP. For example, I'm sure you are wondering how is this updating? Where do we get the information? So, as a stakeholder of the MICT-SITA, let's say you want to add an occupation that is not in the framework. You just need to submit there's a template that we usually share with our stakeholders. You just need to prove why we need to add that framework why we need to add the occupation in the framework. Then of course you need to prove through your research that you've consulted as widely as possible, so that when we motivate on your behalf to the Department of Higher Education, this framework, this occupation gets approved and is added into the actual framework. As I indicated, it's updated every 2 years. And also the OFO codes, when we're reporting for WSPs, you'll be using the OFO code framework, which is already integrated into the LMS, the Learner Management System. So the OFO code, yes, one thing I forgot to mention, it's a 6-digit code framework where, if, for example, if you're reporting an occupation at a senior level or the executive level, it will start with a 6-digit code starting with a 1. And so on. But I'm sure some of you did attend the SDF capacity building workshops, so that those workshops cover in detail in terms of what the OFO code entails, in terms of the key concepts and the definitions. So the WSP submissions, I know the CEO touched on it a little, so I'm just going to expand on what has already been discussed or what has already been reflected. So this is not foreign to you guys, because this is where the process of the SITA, especially if you're an employer, this is where the process starts, because you need to register through the SARS registration process, and of course be linked to the SIC codes of the respective SITA based on whatever sector. But as I'm guessing, all of you here belong to the MICT space, meaning that you are registered within using the what you call the MICT SIC codes, which is all located in it's SITA number 12. Yes, it's SITA number 12. So the WSP process, of course, you need to submit your WSPs. Your WSPs, what are WSPs? So these are your organizational plans in terms of where where have you identified the gaps in terms of where do you need to implement your various skills development programs, such as your learnerships and so on. And of course, the ATR, if you're a first-time employer submitting your ATR, you're a first-time employer, you won't need to submit the ATR, because you wouldn't have delivered any training program in the past financial year. And of course, but if you have submitted before, this is a requirement. And even your pivotal plan, so this will cover your vocational technical programs, such as your learnerships and internships. And also, in your submission, you also need to provide a pivotal training report, especially if you are an old employer registered within the SITA. The legislated date is the 30th of April. So it has always been a norm for the SITA to open the system in December, but unfortunately, because we're busy testing the new system and ensuring that there's that improvement, I mean, it is no doubt that we in an environment that is always changing. And therefore, as a SITA, we need to upgrade in terms of what the technology is telling us in terms of the new requirements. So yes, we will be opening soon. There's no definite date, but there will be a formal communication in terms of us opening the new system. So what we have done as a SITA in terms of the WSP process, we've introduced a manual process where you can start the process of populating those bulk importers.
Recording stopped.
They're in a form of an Excel spreadsheet. In a form of Excel spreadsheet. So you just populate the normal information that you'll populate in the IMS. So once we go live,
Recording in progress.
it will be a matter of just uploading the information, and it's not that you'll be starting from scratch. It will just also populate. So the mandatory grants. So for you to, so what is a mandatory grants? So mandatory grants, remember I mentioned that employers, as an employer registering to be part of the MICT-SITA or in other SITA, you need to register as a skills development levy employer. So if your annual payroll is 500,000 and more, meaning that you'll need to pay that skills development levy through SARS. And of course, it will be allocated to that specific SITA. So in this case, for you to claim back the 20% of your mandatory grants, there are specific requirements that you, of course, you need to meet. Of course, you need to be registered in terms of the Skills Development Levy Act, and you need to be up to date with your levy payments. All payments need to be up to date, as I already alluded, and also you need to have an SDF. An SDF this is a skills development facility. This is the legal person between the SITA and the employer. So if we as a SITA want to communicate something to to the CEO or your director, we have to go through you as an SDF. And also in terms of levy information, if you want to communicate any information relating to your submission, this is the person that will be communicating to as a SITA. And again, you must have implemented, if you're an old employer, you need to have implemented your planned training in the previous financial year. So these are the requirements for you to claim back that 20% mandatory grant. And of course, the benefits of submitting your WSP, other than claiming back your 20%, you'll be eligible to apply for discretionary grant. And I think this is the most important aspect of this presentation, because if you did not submit your WSP, NS will not think twice to approve you, because we remember we as a SITA, we operate in a very legislated environment, and we are guided by certain legislations. So this is one of the key requirements. And of course, through your BBBE verification, there's a possibility that it will boost your BBBE score. And yeah, I think I've already covered in terms of the other benefits. I did mention that what is at the core is the research component. The research component, mainly in terms of the Skills Development Act, is for us as a SITA to develop the sector skills planning. So this is a 65-page research document. So without this document, the SITA wouldn't know which areas to prioritize in the next financial year. So as you can see, it's important that we get it right here. Otherwise, we'll be funding skills that are irrelevant. As a result, the skills development system will become irrelevant, and it will not work. So it's important that as a SITA, we play our part really well in terms of this process. So the sector skills planning document has about 6 chapters. It has about 6 chapters, but in this case, I will be covering only 4, mainly because the partnerships chapter NSD will be covering in some instances, and then also the monitoring and evaluation chapter is covered by the MNE. So this is more of internal reflection in terms of us conducting your trace or impact studies or your evaluation studies. But now I'm going to be starting with chapter 1, followed by chapter 2, 3, and then chapter 6 in terms of what we plan to prioritize as a SITA in the next financial year. So starting with the approach to SSP update, it's important that there's that integration of research. I did mention that we also conduct those mini research studies, and of course we look at the current SSP, which is, for example, the previous financial year's SSP, so that we understand the gaps and so on based on the stakeholder feedback. And of course, there's that desktop research. We look at the literature, what the other studies are telling us, your World Bank, and so on. And then there's that data analysis. And then from there, there's that validation process in terms of us interviewing people, engaging with our stakeholders. So we consult as widely as possible so that it becomes an evidence-informed document. And then, of course, there are surveys, and at some point, I think we sent the surveys to all our stakeholders to complete in terms of the research. And there are focus groups to further validate the information, and we also engage our accounting authority. So the SSP needs to be submitted to the Department of Higher Education twice a year. The first draft is in June, the 15th of June, and the final draft is in the 1st of August. So, as you can see, I can't just wake up and just write that 65-page document without consulting each and every one of you. You guys remain a priority to the SITA, therefore your voice needs to be heard. And this is the one way that your voices can be heard in terms of what we as a SITA need to prioritize. Starting with chapter 1, so the current employer base, so this is through the SARS registration process. We now sitting at 32,985. So these are your small, medium, and large companies. This number has slightly declined, mainly because, we're still experiencing the ripple effect of COVID-19. Many of the companies, especially large companies, it's either they've merged with companies or they close shop, especially international companies. I'm not gonna mention any names, but I'm sure you're very much aware, you watch the news. So starting with the first chart, in terms of the employers, living and non-living employers. So you can see that ICT industry, the ICT subsectors is pretty much dominating. Your information technology accounting 57%, followed by telecommunications and electronics. So you may ask yourself, and if when you look at the levy players, the picture is almost similar. You may ask yourself, why are these other subsectors contributing or accounting a low percentage? This is because film, electronic media, and advertising, they are characterized what we call the gig economy, freelancers. And hence, some don't even make it through the SARS registration process. So that's why we have that low representation there. And then in terms of employers by province, relevant in this case is Free State. Only 1%. Only 1% of employers, represented there. And then, of course, Gauteng, Western Cape, and KZN. And then all the other rural provinces counting a low percentage. So in terms of the labor market profile, I mentioned the ripple effect caused by COVID-19. So 2021, 2022, of course that number was low in terms of employment, and most of the companies, maybe they were still restructuring, and some have closed shops, so that's why we're seeing that number. But in the current financial year, which is, we are implementing the 2023-2024, the 2022-2023 financial year. So we're implementing the strategic plan. So it was important for us to understand the employment status in terms of the sector. So we are seeing an increase in terms of employment with the industry. The sector is slowly stabilizing. And then in terms of the distribution of employees per subsectors, I mentioned that the ICT industry continues to dominate, and I also mentioned that the representation of all those small subsectors is mainly because of what we call the gig economy, freelancers and so on, hence that small representation there. And then of course, number one being in the IT, telecommunications, and then of course electronics. And then, of course, it was also important to look at that provincial distribution. Most of the people are in Gauteng, followed by the Western Cape, and then KZN. And this, I think, has been going on for a while, mainly because the opportunities that are there in those industrialized provinces, such as your Gauteng, Western Cape, and KZN. And hence, you see that picture. Gender distribution and race profiles. Starting with your the sectors, of course, the highest proportion of people employed in the sector are Africans, which of course account for 62%, followed by whites, which is 16%. You will see when I continue with the presentation in terms of how is the distribution fares in terms of occupational levels and also in terms of the OFO code, OFO codes major groups. And then of course the results have remained similar for the past 3 years in terms of the gender profiles. Males keep on dominating. This has been, the results haven't changed in the last 3 years. 58% males and then 42% females. And so such studies are also supported by the international labor organizations and also, and if you look at the business tech articles, this has continued to be the same. Even they also support the statement of this split. So the labor market in terms of OFO major group, as can be seen there, Africans make up the largest employee race as from the previous slide, but they relatively occupy very low positions as compared to the other races. At the managerial level, we see that whites keep on dominating at 24%. And this has been like this for the past 5 years. Professionals, technicians, and so on, and the other races continue to occupy relatively low positions. Yeah, it's a scary picture, né? Yeah. So, for us to understand what is happening in the sector, we also need to understand what is driving change. So we call them the change drivers in the sector. So starting with number one, those that I've highlighted in red there, these are your top five. And if you download our SSP on our website, you'll see that there's a detailed analysis in terms of these change drivers. Artificial intelligence as being number one, cloud computing. And cloud computing, I think we've seen this in 2020 when most of us were working remotely. There was a need for people to save their data online, have your Zoom meetings and so on. And that is still a reality even for now, even though we are slowly moving back to reality in terms of us going back to the office. Big data, everything. This is the new oil. If your company properly manages the data and is able to interpret it, they are way ahead in terms of innovation and also reporting and understanding the trends. 5G, we all need fast internet. Right now, there's a live stream. Without that 5G, of course, the picture quality would be bad, and then even the transmission itself. Internet of Things. Everything is connected. I always make an example of, for example, if a Klabiso was to search for clothes or maybe a shoe in one platform or in her phone, when she goes to another platform, she'll be able to see adverts. I'm sure you've noticed that at some point. So that's the Internet of Things. Everything is connected. And then, of course, your cyber security, blockchain, virtual reality, drones. Drones are big in the film and electronic media. Some of the shots that were previously that seemed impossible to shoot. Now everything is possible. We are now discovering new places because of drones. Autonomous vehicles, 3D printing. This is now the new printing where they are now printing RTP houses using 3D printing. And augmented reality, we see what we call these things, the goggles, where you see like we are maybe flying somewhere, but we're actually in that same room. So that's what is driving change within the sector. And it's very much important as a SITA to understand that. In terms of skills issues, so this is the approach. Remember I mentioned that from a SITA perspective, your WSPs help us to sort of like lay foundation for us to identify which skills, scarce and critical skills have you identified within your respective organizations. So this forms basis in terms of what we need to ask the sector as a whole when we're conducting our empirical research. So the information from the WSP analysis, is of course is validated against a number of. I've already mentioned it through the approach. So it's weighted against the number of how many number of times an occupation was identified as a scarce and critical, and also it's also important to understand the reason for scarcity. As it also helps us to understand where we need to strengthen our interventions as a SITA. And I did mention this, that there's that validation process that takes place, so I'm not gonna go into details. So this is your top 10 scarce and critical skills list. I'm happy also to mention that this is a national list that is also published by the Department of Higher Education. So there are about 17 of our occupations there in that list. So if you want to apply for funding for the SITA, especially to what NS is gonna implement, it's important to consider this list, because this is what 80% of our funding is based on. I mentioned the 6-digit code. So at the professional level, your software developer, your 6-digit code will start with a 2. So it's 251201. And an occupation is often in the OFO code framework is linked to the specialization. And of course, you in a computer network and systems engineer, there's also a specialization and so on. Management consultant. So this is very much important for every organization. I mentioned that every organization, the new oil within the ICT space, it's big data. So business analysts have become, if you check the internet, there is a high demand for business analysts. This is mainly because the organizations wants to ensure that there is efficiency. So this person needs to understand the knowledge from an ICT point of view, and also from a business function perspective. And also ICT security specialists. I did mention that, of course, with everything that we are doing online, we need to understand that we need to protect our data from external people and so on. So ICT security specialists is very much an important occupation. Multimedia specialists, and I think we don't really market enough this specific occupation, and mainly because here in South Africa, I think it's the University of the Witwatersrand currently that is offering game design. I might be wrong, I stand to be corrected, but game design, it's one of the booming and it's the most paying career currently. And in South Africa, there is a lack of game designers and animation programmers. ICT sales representatives, so especially if you're looking from an electronics subsector or perspective, ICT sales representatives remain important. Programmer analysts, developer programmers, and ICT project managers. So I did mention that the whole process fits to the development of the strategic plan. So for us to develop the strategic plan, we need to go through all that process from the WSP process leading up to the development of the strategic plan. And as I mentioned also that we as SITAs operate in a very legislated environment. We need to consider national plans or national legislations. One in particular, remember we used to implement our programs through, it was the NSDS 3. Now we have since transitioned to NSDP outcomes. And as a SITA, we need to align ourselves in terms of those plans. And as you can be seen on the screen, our outcomes are pretty much linked to almost all the NSDP, the national plans. Starting from your left, your NSDP outcomes, followed by ERRP, the Economic Reconstruction Recovery Plan, ERRP skills strategy interventions, and then of course on your far right, that's where you'll see that our strategic plan outcomes are really aligning across through those interventions. So this is NEST in terms of increasing access to occupationally directed programs, supporting the growth of the public college system. So let me go back, let me show. So if you look at outcome number one is the process that I was telling you about. This, the development of the SSP, and also from the identification of occupations in high demand. And of course, support the career development services through our marketing and communications department. And then from there, it's NEST implementation through the learning programs interventions. And again, did I go back? Oh yes. So yes, it's NEST all the way. And of course, I think the SMM is being the vehicle for IR. It's important that we also prioritize the entrepreneurship in our learning programs. Hence, you see that as a SITA, we are also recognizing that important priority as per those 3 interventions, national interventions or national plans. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Thabang. We're running just a little bit behind schedule, about 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm just going to try and rush through such that I do give my colleagues to present amply what it is that they need to provide an overview. But I think, colleagues, it's important to note that from Thabang's presentation, we can't really, without rather a credible sector skills plan, we can't outline the skills demanded and the supply resulting in the skills gaps that exist, obviously, in our sector. That would obviously then help us to identify the critical scarce skills. And within his presentation, Thabang also highlighted these change drivers and mentioned the top 5 being AI, being cloud computing, big data, 5G, internet of things. And I think it's quite very hard to ignore this paradigm shift that's taking place at a very rapid rate. And obviously the disruptions that are taking place in almost every sector and I think as a transversal SITA rather, you know, the MICT-SITA sits in an advantageous position in that we cut across many various sectors, making us quite relevant. And you'll see that the headway that we are making as a SITA with the 4IR qualifications that are responsive to these change drivers that Tabang has made mention will be covered in Ms. Gugusema's presentation when she takes us through 4IR and some of the developments. But before that, I'm just going to call upon Mr. Ernest Nemugavini, who is the Senior Manager for our Learning Programs Division. He'll obviously just take us through some of the key aspects pertaining to the learning programs. What we will do is we will give a bit of a 15-minute engagement session, obviously if you will allow, prior to us moving to our second session. We'll then break for tea, and then after that we will have a presentation by the QCTO and a presentation by the ETQA division. Thank you, Ernest. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Are you well? Okay. Thank you very much, Program Director. I'm going to take you through the presentation that's going to cover what we do as learning programs in collaborations with you as stakeholders. One of the things that we do as a department in response to what Tabang have already alluded with regards to what are the critical and key skills that need to be implemented. We spend 80% of the budget in funding pivotal programs. Pivotal programs are programs that focus on the development of skills in line with the qualifications. You will have your professionals, you will have a vocational technical program, you also have an academic program as well, which means we're talking about your university placement programs, your TVET placement programs, bursaries, learnerships and skills programs. They fall under pivotal programs. Then we are also required to spend 20% of our budget in fundings. Your non-pivotal program in the main is graduate internship programs. Then we also focus in terms of high-level skills as well as intermediate skills as well as elementary skills. Then you can see the percentage of the budget that is being allocated to respond to those skills. But the key mandate is to implement the sector skills plan by allocating a discretional grant to qualifying stakeholders, and also we monitor those programs that are being implemented by stakeholders to ensure value for money out of those projects. I think I've already covered this one. Then I'm just going to reflect on the high level in terms of SWOT analysis. As we implement these programs, what are the key challenges that we experience? You are aware that most of the things in terms of administration were still manual. We still require you to submit most of the document manually. It's one of the key challenges, but we are moving towards automations. I hope in the new financial year, starting from April, we'll be using the systems in terms of administration of learner data and the document as well. Then the other challenge that we also experience when stakeholders implement the programs is that normally our programs run for 12 months, but we find that stakeholders fail to implement those programs within the turnaround time. They overlaps. You end up finding learnership being implemented for 14 months, 16 months. Then it is a challenge, colleagues, because it does have an impact on our reporting as well in terms of completing those learners when they exit the program. Then one of the key things that's also a challenge is around underreporting. We are required to report all the learners that we are funding, both entered and completions. Then if you don't submit all the information that need to be submitted, it does compromise us as an organization in terms of reporting, and we'll end up not reporting all the learners that need to be reported within that specific period. Then the other key things with regards to DG, our window is always oversubscribed every year. I will reflect on the stats on the next slides. But those are the things that we also experience as a department, that each and every year as we open the window, we find that most of the stakeholders do respond to our indicators, and which is a good thing. But the challenge is that we've got a limited resources to respond to each and every applicant. I'm just reflecting the opportunities. There is a growing interest in terms of fire art programs due to the demand of future skills. And the other thing which is very key, we've got high appetite by the industry to respond to skill development. But one of the things that we can also cautious our stakeholders in terms of this appetite, as you implement this program, you need to scan your environment and look at the programs that's going to respond to the key economic activities of your area. You need to look, let's say Free State as an example. What are the key economic activities within Free State? Which program can you respond to in terms of skill development that can really create employment or train learners to start their own enterprise? That's the key thing that you need to do before you start putting your applications. Why do you want to train? Do you want to train because you want to receive grant or just to get a DG? Or you want to create the life of those young people? Those are the things that you need to ask yourself before you complete that applications. Why are you doing that? Do you want to change the life of young people in Free State? Or you just want to train the learners, then you get a grant, then you recycle the same learners every year? I think we need to look at that before we put together our proposal. Then moving to the next slides, I'm just going to reflect the key programs that we implement. The first programs is learnerships and skills programs. Both those interventions are pivotal programs, and they lead to qualifications. One of the things that we have noted every year is that there is a higher demand in terms of technical support and system support. Most of the training providers respond only to those interventions. And I'm worried if this country only needs system support and technical support graduates. If you check the slide that Tabang have presented, it did reflect on the key and top priority skills that we need to respond to. It's very key for you as a stakeholders to read the sector skills plan document so that you can understand what are the key and critical skills that we need as a sector. Not just technical support, not just system support. Imagine if the whole, we're just developing system support and technical support every year, which means we're going to produce learners that are not going to participate in the economy. Those are the things that you must also look at that as you respond to our DG. The next program is graduate internship programs. You know that in our country, every year, all these universities, they're producing graduates. And not all graduates get employment after they've completed their degrees or diplomas. Hence, we've got that intervention to assist these graduates with workplace experience so that they can gain experience for a year so that they can be employable. And one of the key things, if you're going to implement this program, you need to have capacity to host learners in terms of workplace experience. Because these learners, they do have qualification, they just need workplace experience. Not to make copies, not to make coffee, real workplace experience in line with their qualification. Then the other intervention that we implement is to capacitate SME. We also have programs that focus on entrepreneurship development. We also have programs that respond to cooperatives, and we also support community-based organization as well. We also support federations and also support union members with skills development as well. Then, but this indicator is mainly for the union, because you find that you are an SME and you are only 3 of you. How are you going to develop unions? Because you only have three officials. You need to look at that before you respond to this program. Then I'm going to reflect the APP target. Last year, September, the SITA have opened the window to invite stakeholders to respond to that call. And I'm just going to reflect those numbers in terms of the target. And this target, colleagues, are national. I know that when you apply for 1,600 learners as an entity. But that target is a national target that need to be implemented nationally. It's very difficult for us to allocate 1.6 to one entity. Then in terms of budget, TVET placement, we fund it up to 70,000, which include allowance a month, which is 3.8, that need to be paid to the learner every month for a period of 12 months. And these programs are very key because most of the TVET programs, for you to be able to obtain your qualification, you need to do in-service training for 12 months up to 18 months. Then without that component of training, you are unable to get a qualification as a learner. And these programs are very key. We encourage TVET colleges to respond to this intervention as well. We also report completion. It's very key as we implement this program. Ensure that the learners that are enrolled in the program also complete the program so that we can get the value for money out of the intervention that we are implementing. Then the other programs that we also implement is where we assist students that are coming from University of Technology. In the main, they do require workplace exposure before they can get their degree or diplomas. And they have to be in a workplace, I mean real workplace, for a period of 12 months so that they can obtain their qualification. We also report on completion. I'm not going to go through the numbers. I'll move to the graduate internship programs. This program is where you got graduates that have completed their degree, diplomas within our subsectors who need workplace experience for a period of a year. Then the annual target is 1,200, and this target is a national target and it has to be implemented nationally. Then I've also reflected the projected budget as well. In terms of completion, we expect all those learners to complete those programs, but our target is 600. Then moving to the learnerships, we've got an annual target of 3,250. It's a national target. It has to be implemented nationally at the cost of 56,600 per learner, and the total cost in terms of breakdown is 35,000, which is mainly for training, and you also have 1,800 allowance multiplied by 12 for a period of a year. And we encourage stakeholders, as they implement this program, you need to look at the key economic activities of the area where you are implementing the program, so that when these learners complete the program, they're able to be absorbed and participate in the economy. Because we're not just training for the sake of training. We want to change the life of young people so that they can participate in the economy. Moving to the candidacy programs, this is the program where those learners who have graduated, they can be certified as professional within that qualifications. Then we got an annual target of 85, so that these learners can be exposed in a program to qualify them to be professionals, so that they can be more employable in the sector. Skills program is one of the key programs that we also implement. It's within the qualification. You need to identify unit standards that you can implement for a period of 3 months. And when learners complete the program, they need to receive statement of result. And we also want to encourage stakeholders, as you implement this program, try to identify those unit standards that can really make the learners to be employable, so that when they complete this skills program, they either progress or they can also be employed based on the skills program that they've acquired. Then we're also having a target for short programs. These are in the main industry-based programs. You have vendor programs that are very key in the sector. And most of the learners, when they finish these programs, they are more employable. In the past 2 years, we're having challenge with regards to this target in terms of completion, where we find that most of our learners, when they are being exposed to these exams, they were failing this exam. And we have to change the entry requirement that as you implement this program, you need to enroll graduates, not learners with metric qualification, because most of them, they back with these exams, and it does have an impact on the pass rate. And since we've introduced those entry requirements, we've seen that the pass rate have increased, and we are happy to report that we are having a lot of success stories around this program. But it's very key to look at the programs that can really assist learners to be employable when they complete the program. One of the key things that we also do is to encourage stakeholders to reach those rural areas, like your townships, rural communities, to implement those programs. We don't want programs to be concentrated in urban areas. We must also have programs in those rural communities, so that the learners can be exposed to digital skills. Our annual target is 50. We also assist workers with bursaries, workers that are doing programs within our sector. You as an entity, you can apply on their behalf. Then we fund bursary program at a cost of 90,000 per student. But it depends on the fee statement and the cost of the program. If the cost of the program is 20,000, we're going to pay 20,000. If the cost of the program is 50,000, we're going to pay 50,000. 90,000 is just a ceiling amount. We can fund up to 90,000. Same with unemployed learners. We do assist learners that are studying our programs or degrees within our subsectors, registered with universities and colleges. You as an entity, you can apply for those interventions. But unfortunately, we only pay for the fees. There's no project management fee. If you're applying for that interventions, whatever that you pay, you need to pay directly to the institutions as well. We also have a partnerships indicator where we collaborate with TVET colleges in terms of intervention that we can implement together, whether funding or non-funded, but these kind of partnerships, they are very key for us to develop the skills within our sector. We also have partnership with institution of higher learning, like your universities and your colleges. We do forge partnerships in response to skills development. Then partnership for office establishment. One of the key things that we also do is to engage with TVET colleges to offer us an office so that we can deploy our advisors to assist those colleges, lecturers, even their staff and the learners in terms of capacity development. One of the good things that we have achieved through this TVET office establishment, some of the colleges were not accredited with our programs, and our advisors have managed to take them through the process of accreditation so that they can have programs that respond to the digital economy as well as future skills. Because it's very unfortunate to have a TVET colleges next to the industrial, like IT companies, but that TVET college is doing hospitality programs, which means that TVET is not responding to the key economic activities of that area. Hence, we forge to have those partnerships so that we can build capacity to those colleges. We also fund bursaries for our lecturers. We also run programs to assist lecturers in terms of skills development, and also EET programs for the workers as well. On those interventions, I will encourage the TVETs and the CET College to come on board and implement this program in partnership with us. The other intervention which is very key is to build capacities around corporate development. We normally encourage our learners that they must not rely on employment only. They must also explore this opportunity to form cooperatives and identify key things that they can do to their community so that they can participate in the economy. Small business support is very key. We also support SME. We spend most of our budget in supporting SME. Then the other key programs that we also do is to encourage our learners to do enterprise development. There's programs that we normally implement every year where learners are exposed to new venture programs so that they can respond to the economy as well. We support your NGOs, your NPOs, and your CBO in terms of skills development as well. Those are the annual targets, and these targets are national. The RPL programs is one of the key programs that we also implement in partnership with our stakeholders, and this program is mainly for the workers. Normally you have a worker who have been working for a company for so many years. I'll give you a practical example. Let's say it's a cameraman working for SABC, and this old man have been with SABC for more than 10 years. He knows how to use the camera, he's good, but he doesn't have a formal qualification. That worker can be exposed to RPL programs where he can be assessed and deemed competent and have a qualification. We also have a partnership programs with CET where we encourage our CET to come on board so that we can identify programs that we can collaborate and implement in response to skills development. Then I'm just going to take you through the process with regards to DG grants. Every year as an entity we open a window. The last window that we opened, it was last year, and it has closed 30 September last year. Then we invite stakeholders to respond to all those targets that I have reflected in terms of implementations. The first step is for you to submit the letter of intent. It's an application or attach your proposal. And one of the challenges that we've experienced, especially with this process, is find that most of the stakeholders, they don't read the advert. If you remember, the advert was having 2 email addresses. And it was very clear that if you are applying, submit your application to loi@mict.org.za. But if you are having a query of your applications, send your query to dgqueries@mict.org.za. And we find that some of the stakeholders send the application to dgquery instead to LOI email. I want to encourage you that when we publish our advert, please take time to read the advert before you put your application. And it was very clear that there is a template that has been attached. Complete that template as well. Some of you develop your own template and you attach something that is not in line with the advert. Then I want to encourage you that in future, please make sure that you read the advert and comply with the requirement. And there were a list of compliance documents that were articulated on the advert, that when you submit, you make sure that you attach all the required documents. It's very key so that your application can be evaluated and get a feedback. The first step is for the SITA to verify if you have submitted all your compliance documents. Then if you pass that stage, then you are your application get evaluated by the committee. As an organization, we do have a committee that is responsible for the evaluation of all the applications. Then, if your application passed that stage, the next stage is for vetting, where we deploy our advisors to come and visit you and check if you have a capacity to implement the program. If, let's say, on your application, you have indicated that you want to implement a program for technical support for 20 learners, they are going to check if you got equipment, tool of trade for 20 learners. I know some of you are very clever. You go and hire laptop for that day, so that when the advisor is vetting you, you got all your laptops, everything look good, you know. But when you have to implement your report saying that you got 10 laptops, but on your vetting, you say you got 20 laptops. We just want to warn you, colleagues, we're going to add more resources to ensure that you comply with the terms and conditions of the SLA. Sometimes the advisor will come and do the vetting today, and tomorrow he might come to do a follow-up site vetting. Then if you have acted very well and staged your resources, you're going to be in trouble. Then from there will be a vetting outcome through an email, either to say you have been approved or not approved. I just want to emphasize this, DG is at the discretion of the SITA. No entity is entitled for this discretional grant. It's at the discretion of the organization based on the annual targets and the budget that is available for the particular year. Then if you have met all the requirements, then we issue a service level agreement that gets signed by both parties. Then from there you can start implementing the program. You have to recruit the learners that are meeting the requirement, make sure that the learners sign the employment contract. Then from there you can submit your first 15% in line with the documentations. It's very key to, as you do your recruitment, make sure that the learners that you have recruited, they are not there for allowance. They want to achieve the programs in terms of qualifications. And also try to establish if these learners are not participating on the other program. Because we've got also clever learners who register with FACET, register with PSET, Public SITA, they register with Energy SITA, and they also do your program as well. Make sure that as you do your recruitment, make sure that you vet them so that we don't have learners that are really participating in all the programs. And you monitor your project as well. Then in 2023-2024, the DG that we've opened last year, September, we received total number of 2,047 applications through email. And before 2023, we also issue a call, then we received 2,057 applications. You can see that every year when we open the DG window, we receive high number of applications. And one of the challenges, these just emails that we have received. This is just a total number of emails. When you open the application, you find that the stakeholders have applied on a variety of programs. They've applied for learnerships, they've applied for internships, TVET placement, which means it's more than what you are seeing on the screen in terms of what the committee have to evaluate. Then you can see that the competition is very, very tight. Make sure that when you apply, present a very strong business case in terms of why you want to implement that program. Then I'm just going to reflect in terms of the status, in terms of allocation per province. You can see in Gauteng we've received an application total to 12,284 learners. This is just in terms of number of learners that the stakeholders in Gauteng have applied for. And the allocation was 4,274 in terms of Gauteng. Then in various provinces, this instance where you find that one stakeholders have applied to various provinces, then you can see the figures as well there. And what have been allocated is 3,108. Then in Western Cape, you can see that in terms of application, it was 1,995 learners, and the allocation was 1,122 KZN. You can see 2,158 going up to your provinces in terms of applications. Then you can see that in terms of the demand is very high, and it's always the case that the higher the demand, the lower the supply. Then in terms of indicators, then you can see that most of the stakeholders prefer to apply for learnership. You can see that it's sitting as 34%, which means there is higher demand in terms of learnerships. And if you remember on the target, the annual target for learnership is 3,250 learners. But check what the SITA have received in terms of applications. Then moving to TVET placement is sitting on the 13%. You can see that most of the stakeholders, there's a high appetite in terms of TVET placement. Same with skills programs and short programs and graduate internship programs. And university placement, skills program is a little bit low, same with programs that focus on entrepreneurships. Then one of the challenges that we're experiencing in terms of numbers, in terms of application, is programs that talk to CET and TVET. Then I want to encourage stakeholders that are representing TVET, please, as we open our DG window, please respond to those interventions. We normally experience a lot of challenges with regards to response, with regards to these indicators, such as your TVET bursaries, TVET lecture development, your CET programs, your TVET managers. Those are the programs that we normally receive less response in terms of DG and your AET programs. Then the demand is on learnerships. Everyone wants to implement learnerships. Then I think that's the summary of the presentation. Thank you very much. Over to you, Program Director.
Thank you, colleagues. So we've seen the 2023-2024 predetermined objectives presented by Mr. Nebugabini. And I think this can get a unanimous decision in terms, or idea rather, in terms of LPD being the engine of the MICT-SITA business. From his presentation, he's also made quite strong calls to yourselves as the stakeholders to ensure that we adhere to some of these processes such that there's meticulous implementation and execution of learning programs. He also made mention, which is obviously in line as well with our rural strategy, that we need to obviously expose digital skills as well into far-flung areas. And obviously based on some of the output indicators, we would be able then to have responsive programs to that. Ladies and gentlemen, that particular presentation brings us to our engagement sessions. I did mention that we'll give about 15 minutes as opposed to the 30, just so that you can voice out your comments from these three presentations, as well as the address from the CEO, if there have been, any pertinent issues, or if there was one key factor that came out from the CEO's opening address. You're more than welcome to please voice out your opinion. This is actually your session, so we do want robust engagement. It's a two-way communication. I think if we don't hear from our stakeholder insight, we would be obviously doing an injustice in terms of maintaining a relationship with our key stakeholders. So we do have about 1, 2, 3, I think, mics that are roving. If you could please just put your hand up should you want to make a comment, ask a question, and highlight the organization and your name, rather than the organization that you represent. And we will take about 2 or 3 questions at a go before I open up to the panel for responses. Comments, compliments as well are very welcome. colleagues, you've seen that, just from the two presentations, the SITA has made quite great headway from a research perspective, as well as from an implementation of learning programs perspective. So we also are open to that. The floor is yours. Any questions? Any comments? Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for affording me the opportunity. My name is Zama. I'm actually representing MICT-SITA training. I think just to cut the long story short, colleagues, I know that there are quite a number of training providers in here. In short, training providers. I'm trying to be short and I'm trying to be straight and fair. I'm actually looking for a job. I am a facilitator, I am a moderator, and also the assessor. The reason why I'm doing that, it's because comes next week Tuesday, we are closing our offices. Unfortunately, since from 2016, we have had the accreditation with MICT-SITA, but since from then, we never had even a single student being trained on learnerships or something of that nature. We have had quite a number of training providers coming from different provinces, training, people in our own community. We are still doing the traditional way of training. We are depending on students who are paying for themselves. But even today, if you can go to Bothaville, there are some institutions that are actually recruiting the very same students we are trying to recruit as well. And they are recruiting them for learnerships while we are expecting them to pay for themselves. So in short, if there's anyone who is actually looking for a facilitator, an assessor, and a moderator, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. I think in good marketing and promotional terms, you need to obviously target based on where your stakeholders are. But I think for the benefit as well of your question or comment or statement, we are going to be having an ETQA presentation after the tea break. So I think that would obviously provide quite great insight for yourself. So I'll give over to you.
Right, good morning, colleagues. My name is Chris Mateja from FS Compi Steps and Information Technology that we are currently based in Valcom. Let me just take this time to thank the MICT for giving us this opportunity to come here in Free State. I think one point is why the Free State is on 1%. It is because we realize that most of the training providers who come and train here are the outside training providers that you can realize they are here because of money. When coming to look at the host employers or the workplace for the student, then it's going to be difficult for them because they are not here. And somehow you realize that they took these learners for workplace for maybe in a week, for 1 or 2 days. And then if you realize that maybe the training providers for Free State, because we are here, for an example, myself, I was given an opportunity of 15 learners in the previous DG window. I've got 2 learners that was placed at the Machawe local municipality. I get a call last week. The manager called me to say, like, Chris, I'm absorbing these 2 learners of yours. And then I also make my advisor aware of that. And one of the learners also placed at the mining. She also get the opportunity for that to continue with the mine. So for having the people who are coming from outside to come and train here is not a problem, but the problem is when coming to the host employers, because they are not here to support or to monitor those learners to engage with the host employers for the future of these learners. I think this is why we are on 1% when coming to employ these learners, and it gives us a problem because on the chart we are bad. So that is why you see Gauteng is always dominating. As my learned friend on the other side said, yeah, we had a challenge of training providers who are coming outside, and when they come here, they will come and say, Chris, I'm looking for your venue to use your venue. The only thing I can pay you is for the rental, but I'm coming with my facilitators, assessors, and as moderators. And after that, they're gone. When coming to looking for the workplaces for the learners, it's a struggle. Some of the learners are not even go to the workplaces. So that was my first question. And I think maybe going forward, I hear Mr. Ernest was also presenting about the SLA process and so on. There are some vetting that was done. Also, I'm one of the people who was vetted by the MICT, I think this year. Mr. Ernest never mentioned to say maybe the deadline when we should expect the SLA or not. Maybe he can clarify that to us when we're expecting that or not. I'm not sure. Maybe I can fall on the 320 of the allocation, because I've seen Free State 855 applied, but the allocation goes to 320. So I'm just praying and hoping God will put me there so that we can able to service our community. Yeah, I think one of the things is the partnership that I've seen. Most of the partnership, it goes with the MICT, the TVET, and the CET. I've never seen to where the MICT partner with the training, the private providers. And when we realize that we are training providers, we see these learners, we engage them, and we do research, and we also sneeze. Because you realize that one of the public college was given maybe 50 learners for learnership, but you have been given 15 learners. When you go around, you realize that 50 learners that was given to the public college, they are doing nothing like the way you as a private provider you are doing. And at the end, they end up dropping out and coming to you to say, like, can I continue with you? Because it's the same funder. I said, it can't be possible on that. So you must also look into the partnership with the private providers, those serious training providers, because some private providers really, Mr. Ernest said, they can hire laptops, and we are aware of that. People also using the libraries to come for the advisor to come and vet them. After that, they are gone. Some using even the charges. So, and lastly is, how possible is a training provider from outside to come and train maybe 50 learners here? How do you vet that person if that person doesn't have the resources in Free State, for an example? And then also myself, I can apply for Eastern Cape. How do you show that this 50 learners that you are giving this person in Free State, is there any resources? So obviously there is something that really give me a sleepless night to say, like, this person get 50 learners, but she doesn't, or he doesn't have even a single office here in Free State. So maybe the high possibility in myself, maybe in the near future I can apply for the other provinces. I think those were my comments, or maybe some of the questions. I know some it will hurt, but true to be talked. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll take one question, and then I'll just open up to the panel.
Good morning. My name is Lebogang Masimngai. I'm from a company, a skills development company here in Bloemfontein. My question is on the people trained on entrepreneurship. I saw that you reported that it was only 2.54%. So I just want to understand, what is your expectation in terms of how you want the providers to carry out that part? Because we know that the qualification is the new venture creation is actually the services SITA qualification. So do you accept partnerships or new ventures or consortiums where us as skills development providers we can actually partner with companies from other who are accredited with other SITAs to actually help you to increase the number of people who are trained on entrepreneurship? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. I will obviously open up the Q&A to our panel, but just to highlight the questions that we need to address. It was the issue of addressing external providers obviously infiltrating the Free State, those service providers across other regions as well. And then the issue of partnerships, how do we include private providers? And from the gentleman's comment as well, what is obviously the expectation on how providers can carry out the output indicator for entrepreneurship?
just to appreciate, I think, the bravery and the confidence of coming to a session such as this one, and you know, blatantly state the current case of being unemployed. I think you are in the relevant space and platform, and you'll realize in the presentation, I think that would be made by the senior manager responsible for ETQA, Ms. Nelson, that very space of assessor and moderator, it's one space that we as South Africans have not leveraged on. We not actively participating, and it's very important that we take advantage of that space. Even when it comes to graduates, those that can't find jobs can still participate actively in that particular space. That's why we're conducting over the past few weeks some stakeholder engagement sessions through ETQA so that people see opportunities beyond skills development in the area of assessor and moderator. And the issue of ensuring that our footprint is much more intense even in rural areas, but such that you don't have people from outside of the province monopolizing provinces, Mr. Mateka. It's one of the thorny issues that we are currently handling. That's why through the board, part of our SCM plans in terms of our procurement plans approved is to secure and procure a GIS system. That GIS system will enable us beyond the current manual processes that we are using to have proper footprint and establish as to which particular districts do we need representation, and ensure that even our interventions when it comes to capacity building, it's more targeted in those particular districts where we don't have proper representation. So from a continuous basis, be rolling out directed and targeted stakeholder engagement kind of interventions in particular, to ensure that those particular areas where we don't have any footprint, we ensure that we have footprint, because we have conviction that we are a SITA that belongs to the entire country of South Africa. There's no learner, like I alluded to in my presentation, in my address earlier on. There's no particular area that should be excluded when it comes to MICT-SITA offerings. Hence, we'll be going to each and every region, but beyond that, there will be that rollout of capacity building sessions that are targeted to those particular districts and those particular areas where we don't have any representation. Part of the partnerships and collaborations that we have with your TVET colleges are mainly meant to ensure that there is that reach to those particular areas wherein there are totally no stakeholders beyond the efforts that we'll be embarking on. Thanks.
Okay. Good morning once more, and thanks for the question. The first issue that I will deal with is the issue of stakeholders that are coming from other provinces to come to Free State and implement the program. I understand where you are coming from, but if you are a training provider and you are accredited in Free State, and you also have a capacity to implement a program in Northern Cape, nothing stops you to apply for funding for Northern Cape, provided you are having a capacity to implement a program in that provinces. Because Free State is not a country, it's a province. And all of us, we are South Africans. Then which means if you are accredited in Gauteng, you can implement a program in Limpopo, provided you got a capacity to implement a program in that province. I understand where you are coming from in terms of stakeholders that are coming here with no capacity. That one is a challenge. I think those are the issues that we need to look at that going forward. But if they've got a capacity to implement the program, they can implement a program. In Free State, you can also implement a program in Gauteng. As you apply, don't limit yourself because you reside in Free State. If you look at our annual report last year, we're having few programs in Northern Cape because we got less response in terms of DG in that province. You need to look for opportunity as a business person to say, if I can't get opportunity in Free State, I can explore opportunity somewhere. But we encourage a resident training provider to really respond to their province as well, because they know where to get a placement, and we're going to get a volume for money in those programs. But the issue of capacity is very key. And in the past, we used to do this virtual site vetting where stakeholders can demonstrate resources virtually. In the current financial year, we're conducting physical site vetting to go and check if the stakeholder is having those equipment and all the applicable resources to implement the program. Then the other question was on the enterprise development programs in terms of new venture. As you implement this program, seek for opportunity. I'll give you a practical example with technical support. If you are implementing a technical support program, you can build some other top-up programs such as teaching learners how to install alarms, teaching learners how to install surveillance cameras, teaching your learners to repair some of the things that are also technical, so that you can build the element around enterprise development. Because if you have just trained a learner doing technical support, but that learner have received a top-up unit standard around satellite installations. If you check most of the households these days, they do have DSTV TV, and they need installers. And most of these installers, they're based here in Bloemfontein. If you want to install a DSTV satellite in a Whichabelo, you have to rely on the installer who's based in an urban area. And if you're implementing this program, such as technical support, and you build an element around a satellite installer, which means when these learners complete the program, they can also run their own businesses, installing a satellite to their communities. That's the key thing, that as you implement the program, think about enterprise development, build some unit standard that can assist learners to start their own business. You can also do a one unit standard from MICT-SITA around new venture while you are implementing system support, while you are implementing technical support, so that you can bring that element around enterprise development. I think those are the questions that I've noted. Going back to the DG, if you have applied and you didn't receive a positive outcome, it doesn't stop you to apply again in a new window. And if you got a query, send your query under DG queries at MICT and present your business case to say, I've been applying, this is what I'm going to do with this learner. It's not about you as a training provider. Look at the impact that you are going to do to the end user, which are the learners. You can't present a business case to say, I'm going to close down if I'm not going to DG grant, if I'm not going to access DG grant. You need to present a case around how are you going to build capacity to those learners, because the beneficiary of this project is not you as a training provider, the end user is the learner. Let's look at the bigger picture. What are you going to do with those learners after you've trained them? Present a case that I'm going to train these learners under these programs. I'm going to change the life of these learners. When they complete these programs, they're going to participate in the economy. I've got this host employer that are going to employ these learners. It's not about you as an entity, it's about the end user who's going to benefit out of this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ernest. Colleagues, I'm just going to leave it there for now. I'm sure we do want leg stretch as well as a comfort break. If I'd ask us to get back here in the next 10 minutes, so at 12:20, if we could be back such that we can then have our presentation from the QC2O, from 4IR, as well as the E2QA division. Thank you so much for your engagement.
That I'm done.
fourth industrial revolution. We all know that prior this 4YR, there were other previous industrial revolution that we had experienced. I am not going to talk about that for now, but just to cover where we are as a country and where we are at high level, and also where we are as an organization. Therefore, my presentation will cover these three aspects. As I've highlighted that the 4IR is a global agenda, we started responding or participating in this global agenda in 2018, where our Honorable President attended the Davos